which opens today. So we're very, very pleased about that. Okay, we're taking a little bit different view on the tissue business, tissue industry this year. We're doing a little more focus on the business side of it. I've learned in the past year or so, I've worked with the paper business and tissue business for a long time, 25 or 30 years, and I had never really realized how big a category the tissue side of things is in the retail and distribution world. I knew it was a big business. It's around it's a rough estimate, $80 billion global business for the tissue business. But I learned in conversations over the last maybe 2 years that tissue and paper products are the largest non-food category for many retailers, and the third largest of all categories after dairy and fruit and vegetables. Costco put out or did a story last year and put out some official release that their Kirkland bath tissue is their largest stock keeping unit, SKU, at about $500 million a year annual turnover or sales. There's also data from Nielsen that shows that when paper products are purchased, it doubles the spending or the basket size per visit, which is not because we're all getting lots of money for tissue products, but because if you have you bring the van or the station wagon to the shopping center and you buy other things and load up the basket. Tissue products also are very, very large away from home category for the hotels, restaurants, catering, the janitorial, sanitation, facility services, et cetera. And it's a business that grows at about 4% annually worldwide, which is pretty steady, good growth. So we have the Tissue World events. We started the Tissue World events about 21 years ago in Nice to serve the tissue business. We have expanded from the European show to the America show here. We have a show in China, and now we're starting regional shows in Istanbul, Turkey, and Sao Paulo, Brazil. So we're sort of going with the growth areas, and it's a very interesting development to grow with the industry. Now, as I said, it's a big business, but it's also there are definitely concerns. We have to be very careful when competitors gather in one room, that we have to be careful about pricing and antitrust laws. So I just want to remind everybody here that the ground rule with respect to tissue prices is that we want to fully respect any U.S. or European or any other antitrust and competition laws, and therefore it's strictly forbidden to discuss anything that can be seen as leading the market on pricing or collusion between competitors. So I just want to remind everybody about that, be very careful about that. I just want to have to say that. So as I said, it's an $80 billion business, and until 1993 there was no show, no event for the global tissue community. Since then, we've developed it very successfully to serve the tissue business worldwide with previously a very manufacturing-oriented focus. We get thousands of visitors each time we hold the event. We get people coming from 80 or 90 countries, which I'm very pleased that we get a very global audience coming to the event. But as I said, previously a very manufacturing focus. Now we're going to the next step, and that is to serve, attract, and support the retail and commercial side of the business, the buying and selling, and the distribution channels, because, as I said, we were manufacturing focused, and this event, pretty much when the product left the loading dock of a converting plant, we didn't think about it too much. Now, there's numerous reasons why we didn't, but now we fully are. So this year we've added, for the first time ever, what we're calling TRIF, which is the Tissue Retailers and Distributors Insight Forum. We've added a lot of topics to the conference program this time, looking at the business from the business side of the equation, serving the retailers and distributors with insight, so they'll get more understanding of this category and this business. There's several drivers for why this is happening, and one is that we've seen interest by retailers. I think 3 years ago in Nice, France, Costco sent a team to the event, and then 2 years later, Damon, which is a broker specialized in private label putting private label people together with retailers. Came to the event, and then last year in Barcelona we saw Tesco, we saw Ahold, we saw IKEA, Lidl. So we decided to do this focus, and when I started thinking about how we're going to do it, I talked to hundreds of retailers and distributors, and I don't know if anybody in this audience tries to sell to retailers, but I don't know if you had the same problem I did, but buyers are hard people to reach. They didn't answer every single email I sent. I thought they'd be very excited to hear from me, but they're pretty hard people to reach. But once I got them on the phone, they'd give me 2 minutes and we'd speak for 45 and tell them about the environmental side of things, the private label brand side of things we're going to cover here, the changing consumers, all these different topics. Then we got interest. So people like Sam's Club, Kroger, H-E-B, et cetera, when I got them, they said, hey, we've been looking for something like this. We'll be there. So I think we have about 50 buyers from the retailer and commercial and away from home side here. So I'm very, very, very pleased that we've been able to attract so many of them. As I mentioned, a real driving force is the environment and sustainability topics. We have Greenpeace and WWF on the podium here. Tissue is based on what I call the few resources, meaning fibers, energy, and water. All three of them can be very controversial. All three of them must be responsibly used and sourced. And so that has raised the topic of tissue and sustainability on the radar screen for retailers and distributors. The private label and brands challenge or balance is certainly something that also gets a lot of people's interest. In America, about 75% of the tissue market is still dominated by the brands, the national brands, whereas in Europe it's pretty much the opposite, where 65% of the tissue sold in Europe is private label. So people are wondering, why is that? What will it change, et cetera? So we're going to cover topics like that. There's also changing consumers. There's e-commerce. Amazon is entering the tissue business and getting in quite clearly. There's also new technology. There's TAD has been the supremo quality for many, many years, but there are new technologies that are just starting up in the past year or so that people want to hear about. So basically, we're doing this because it makes sense. And also a key thing is that we want to break down the silos. A lot of people doing a lot of good work in and around the tissue industry, but maybe the research director or the research guy from Italy is not really talking to that Safeway guy in San Francisco. And we want to just facilitate better communication and break down the silos and through a wide range of functions, including these that I've listed, buying and sourcing, marketing and sales, R&D and technical, et cetera. So I hope that everyone here can benefit by being here, meeting people, learning from each other, so that we will have cross-functional learning and innovation by progressive players in the tissue value matrix, so we can grow the category, sustain the planet, and create more value. That's our goal here. So basically, Tissue World is a work in progress, and we started with this maybe 20 years ago, and maybe someday we'll get to this, to build the world's tissue marketplace. I think we're on the right track. So, if this would work, probably just, no, not sure. No, don't get that one. Oh well. Anyway, without further word from me, I will just turn over the podium to our first speaker. And what we're going to do, we're going to have, I believe it's 6 speeches this morning, covering a wide range of topics, but all, pretty much centered on the business side of tissue. And then we'll have a panel discussion for about 45 minutes. I really want to encourage everyone to participate. What we've found over the years is if you want to address a question, you can stand up and ask it at the microphone. We'll have microphones around the room. But we also, it works very well if you write down your question. There'll be a hostess or hostesses that pick up the questions, bring them to me, and then I'll sort of, if I can read them, first of all, but please write legibly, I'll sort of filter them and pass them out to the speakers. And we found that's a very good way to get good dialogue going. So, just a housekeeping thing, we'd like to ask you to keep your telephones turned off so they're not ringing in the middle of the speeches and things like that. And yeah, I just want to welcome you all once again very much to Miami Beach here. This morning when I was getting dressed, I wasn't sure if I should wear a tie or a bikini. It's hard to know what you're supposed to do in Miami. But so I'm very happy you're all here, and I'd like to turn the podium over to Todd Hale, who is the Senior Vice President of Consumer and Shopper Insights at Nielsen in the USA. And Todd will be speaking to us about evolving consumer and retail trends and the implications for the retail tissue sector. So please join me in welcoming Todd Hale.